Well, welcome back. I'm Kevin O'Keefe. At issue today, disappearing Roman Catholic sisters. Before the break, we talked about the exceptions to the shrinking numbers. Well, there's no bigger exception than my next guest. Sister Mary Peter is a gay man who's part of a worldwide phenomenon called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. For the last 30 years, this controversial group has raised over $2 million for charity. They continue to grow new congregations all over the world, including Australia, Europe, and South America. And Sister Mary Peter is Skyping me from San Francisco. Welcome to the show, Sister.
Thank you, honey. Very nice to be with you.
I'm trying to keep a straight face and be an intelligent journalist here, but I have to ask off the top, clearly there are people who will look at you right now and say, this is not a real sister, this is not a real nun. How would you respond to that?
Well, I'd tell them to adjust their set because they're obviously not getting a good picture. This is very much a real and sincere calling. It's a vocation to service, and anyone who's willing to put on this much makeup, feathers, and silk is in it for the long haul.
Now, there are people who will also look at this and say this is highly sacrilegious, what you are doing, dressing up in drag like a nun. How would you respond?
Well, those are probably the same people who said that Buddha was insulting Hinduism and that Jesus was out of line chasing the money changers out of the temple. There's always a role in spirituality for the holy fool who's able to come in and speak truth to power. And really, that's what the sisters have been doing for 30 years, keeping people honest with tongue planted firmly in cheek and joy in our heart, a bit of humor.
Now, in 1987, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence performed an exorcism when the Pope came to San Francisco, and you were placed on the papal list of heretics. Surely this is sacrilegious, what you did there.
Well, I don't think so. At that time, if you remember, that was the height of the AIDS crisis. Hundreds of people were dying every day in the city, and until that kind of pressure was put on the Pope, he had not even bothered to talk about AIDS publicly. So I think we were doing a community service by calling the Pope to an honest accountability. And shortly after that exorcism, you'll remember the very poignant moment where the Pope actually embraced someone suffering from HIV/AIDS who had Kaposis sarcoma. So I think we played a pivotal role in keeping that moment real.
Now, can't you do this sort of community service without dressing up like a nun?
Oh, of course.
So why dress up like the way you're dressing up?
Well, whether I'm in habit or not, the benefit of this is it really catches people by surprise.
Yes.
When you see someone who's almost 2 meters tall turn the corner looking like this,
yes,
you're at a loss for words. And that's a good place to begin a conversation, in that stillness, because it gives me the ability to really penetrate into someone's heart and just have a human connection. No politics, no bitterness, just a one-on-one connection at a very deep level.
So give me a sense of what this means to you. I mean, I was talking about it yesterday to a friend, and they said, oh, they're just making fun of nuns. I mean, what is this about for you in terms of, is it about integrating your, because I mean, you even have a degree in theology. You thought about the priesthood at one time. I mean, you have serious theological training here. So this is about more than dressing up in drag for you.
That's right. And, you know, I can't explain what this means to me better than a friend of mine who was a Jesuit priest said. And that was when I was struggling in theology and thinking about priesthood and living in an intentional community, trying to put my sexuality and my activism and my spirit together. And he looked at me and he put his hand on my shoulder and said, you know, you're a doctor without a hospital, you're a teacher without a school, you're a priest without a church. Why are you spending so much time trying to get back inside the box? Go out onto the street where people live and bring your message and touch them there. And that was a really healing moment for me, because what I realized was all of this has actually pushed me outside of the container that traps so many people in the way they separate the different parts of their life. And this gives me the freedom to bring all of those talents and tools together as well as all of my own pain and struggling, and really reach out to people without some great agenda or without a powerful church administration or bureaucratic government behind me, limiting the way I can reach out to people and make contact. And that's a privilege, and I treat it as such, and I wear the wimple with a lot of humility.
Can you give me a sense of some of the fundraising and social justice work that you've done? You were in Canada and Toronto for many years. What sort of stuff did you do here in Toronto?
Well, one of the first things I did is I lived in the gay community at church in Wellesley, and so I knew a lot of the young folks that plied their trade on Maitland Street in Alexander.
This is prostitutes, I suspect you're referring to.
Yeah, this is young kids who were doing street walking to kind of find shelter and keep their heads afloat. And so the first thing I did is I walked out and I started simple condom distribution, and then I followed that up with some needle exchange and then health information and care. I would walk out with a giant bag filled with information and connections to the Ministry of Health and the organizations that were there. I also called bingo on Friday nights at Bar 501, which was a lot of fun. That's a very traditional kind of sister role to play.
Yes.
And we raised money for all sorts of organizations, Casey House, women's breast cancer health, all sorts of things like that.
How have your numbers grown in the past few years?
Like wildfire. We have doubled in the last 3 years the number of orders in North America and across the world, and some of them in incredibly unlikely places. We have a house in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in Colombia, and now in Uruguay. We have people living in the heart of the Bible Belt in Birmingham and Atlanta, and it's really been an incredible explosion of interest and in commitment to being a sister in places in need.
You had a large presence in Toronto. You mentioned your work here, and now you're in San Francisco. What are your plans for Canada in terms of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence?
Well, we intend to make everything above the 49th parallel open for nunnery and mischief. We do have a campaign for global domination, but we do it with jewelry and accessories and joy. So we're really hoping that the mission spreads. Canada was actually the second place the sisters took root after San Francisco. The first convent outside of the city was in Toronto. We're very proud of that, and we're happy that a new mission has started in Vancouver, and we're looking forward to that spreading to Montreal and to Halifax and Toronto, where people have expressed an interest.
Speaking of expressing an interest, if someone is watching this and is interested, is there a way they can get in touch with you and the sisters?
Absolutely. The easiest way is to use the web, a sister's best friend, and you can go to the web address www.thesisters.org. You can find me under Meet the Sisters by searching Mary Peter, and you can find our different convents around the world by going to the World Contacts page. It's a very efficient system, and we'll get back to you within 24 hours.
Well, thanks very much for your time today, sister, and I wish you best of luck with your future plans.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Well, that's it for this edition of At Issue. You can email your comments or thoughts to comments@ichannel.ca. I'm Kevin O'Keefe. Thanks for watching.